everybody. Oh, man, I got a sister on the channel today. I'm super excited. Man, let me tell you, this sister's international. I just asked her, I said, where are you? She said, I'm in Costa Rica in the world somewhere. She said, I have gone global with my situation. And let me tell you something, everybody. One of the things that happens in life is how big is your dream? And what I mean by that is you could be what she does in a local area, and that's what you would be. But if you want to experience more, you dream bigger and you do more. And I lead at it in to say that is the ambition of me here at Strong Inspirations. I'm an international show. My name is Anthony Brogdon, and I'm an ordinary guy trying to do something extraordinary by bringing you this Black history from the people who can tell it eloquently because they know what they're talking about. We are almost up to 3 years on this game, and it has gotten serious. I have learned so much from people like this lady. You're going to learn a lot, who've come on the show, and some have made me cry telling their stories. Give you an example. Did you see the one that I did with the lady who integrated the school in Gainesville, Florida, and them white kids tried to kill her one day? Watch that video. Did you see the one that I did where they had the lady's grandfather? He was going back to his native city in Alabama, South Carolina, wherever, and he never showed up. You can assume what happened to that brother. Good guy, and wife and two small kids. Watch that video. Did you see the one on a high note? And a lot of them, even on those notes, there is a good that we bring out of that, right? And on the note where we have Frederick Douglass's great grandson, two-time great on the show. I'm not playing with you, my brothers. So hit the subscribe button on Strong Inspirations. Hit the like button on this video because you're going to like this. This good-looking sister, too. She's smiling and everything. You're going to dig this. Hit the like button on this video. Hit the notifications bell and tell somebody about Strong Inspirations. Don't keep it to yourself. Don't do that. Let it flow. Because we're coming at you at least one a week, if not more. Couple more things, everybody. If you know that I am a historian in my own right, there, I guess I can say that because I've done this documentary. It's Business in the Black, the Rise of Black Business in America. Now, I was a decent student in school. I got some A's, B's, maybe got a C here and there, what have you. And but I did not hear them tell me that there were Black people in the 1800s, some enslaved, who owned businesses. And when I found that out, that blew my mind. And that's what this documentary is about, and so much more. And I even interviewed some people whose family owned the business in the early 1900s. It's all in here. It's streaming on Amazon. Then I took it to the next level, let's say, and I wrote a book on this. Get you a copy of this book. It is selling very well. Thank you for doing that too, my brothers and sisters. I really appreciate that because not just that it helps me in some regard, but it also allows me to donate books to schools across America. Because for every 10th book I sell, I donate one. I want the kids to hear this. Because I did not know. It would have made me a different person to know that those facts and others. All the way slaves. Did you know that there were slaves who sued for their freedom and won? We wasn't going to just lie down easily and take that abuse. We found ways, and I tell you of daring escapes. Man, there was a guy, he was so tired of it, he mailed himself in a box to freedom, and he got there. So he had to be in that box for, I think he's something like 20 hours. Check it out. It's in the book. And I got a children's book On that same note, it's 30 Black business owners in the 1800s. For the kids, it's colorful and all that, not a lot of writing. I gotta get this out. And coming soon, let's say next year at this point, I got a movie coming out titled They Did It, about 12 rich Black people. I'm going to give it to you one way or another, my brothers and my sisters. So do all that, please. Now, you hear me use this term strong a lot. Strong is my favorite word. I wish my middle name was strong. And in my world, strong stands for strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. And that is my introduction to my guest today. She's a strong soul sister. Come on, introduce yourself, and let's get it on. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you for being such an inspiration to the community. I love what you're doing, love your energy. Congrats on your new book coming out next week, right?
That's right, that's right, that's right.
Yeah, yeah, you're talking my language. I'm all about sharing stories and helping people share their stories. So thank you.
Okay, let's do this. I'm gonna ask a couple questions. First of all, what is your name? Tell us your name.
So my name is Dawn James, and for the past 13 years, I've had the pleasure of working with over 400 writers to get them to share their story.
All right, we're gonna get into that, but I got to ask a couple questions about you. You know, person, not too bad, but let the people know who you are. So, where were you born and raised?
Okay, I was born in the Caribbean, but I've been living in Canada for several decades. I don't want to age myself, but when I went to Canada, there was black and white TV.
Oh, okay. Okay, so in the Caribbean, what island? What island? What island?
Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay. Did you live in the urban part of the island, in the hills?
No, I was born, and in less than 6 months, we were in Canada. So for me, my Caribbean history was very short. However, I had very strong Caribbean parents. So in our home, we grew up with those Caribbean values. My parents, I know the history, and it was really important for us to maintain that. You know, it doesn't matter where you live, home is home. Yes. So you take those values with you. All those values that matter, definitely I grew up with. So I was very fortunate that my parents were very strong Caribbean parents, which means you were in a home where you respect your elders. You were in a home where you valued family time. You were in a home where a lot of knowledge and information and wisdom was passed down to you from your elders.
Okay, I want
to. So that's some good stuff we got growing up.
Yeah, I'm gonna delve into that. What do you mean by that? Y'all had to sit at dinner every night and talk, or on Sundays? What is that Caribbean background thing? What is that?
We always had a really big family meal. Sundays was like sacred. And you know, back in those days, I'm talking 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
No stores were open on Sundays. So Sunday was family time, family day. We had a really big meal. We ate together. It was traditional, you know, Caribbean cooking. So it could be curry dishes, callaloo, what have you. And so and lots of provisions. So we always had that special. Sunday was sacred. Sunday was sacred for family sitting down.
That because you grew up in Canada, that's how it was when you were in Canada, is what you're telling me, right?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, for us, the family meal is also a very important time, right? This is where you connect with each other, you have conversation, you check in. So that was really important, and we maintain that always.
Okay, well that might be a little different than the American way, because and that wasn't in my household, but so often they say the kids not to be heard but just be seen. You've heard of that, haven't you?
I've heard that.
Yeah, but that's not your way. Is that what you're telling me?
No, I'm saying that one of the family traditions we had was Sunday dinner was sacred. We were always together. We sat down, we talked. It was a big Caribbean meal, you know, it was a big, big meal. And so that was part of the family tradition. Yes, I grew up with the children are seen, not heard. I got all of that, you know, so, but I think for us, the family time was really, really special and very important.
Well, okay, let's go. Let's delve a little bit from that. What is what's the difference between Caribbean life and life in Canada, from what you might know?
Well, because I've been in Canada more than the Caribbean, but what I can tell you is the second generation, so not the adults who went. Don't forget, Canada opened their doors in the 60s. A lot of people moved to Canada from other countries, so there was a huge wave of immigrants in Canada. And that generation tried to keep their culture. Now, their children, which is my generation, it's a little different because now you're in a multicultural, mosaic education environment. Some things got diluted, some things didn't get diluted. So this generation, so I'm going to say the under 60 crowd, will have less of those traditions if they chose to just go, I'm Canadian, right? So when we raised our children, when we raise our children with those same Caribbean values. That's how we raised our family. But there are folks that went to school in Canada who may have parents with strong Caribbean values, but that doesn't mean that they kept those values.
Yeah, sure.
And then you got to look at all the nuances of their experience, their interactions with other cultures and going to school. And most of us, and I'll tell you, the very first time I had a Black teacher was in university. So you got to imagine, going to school for 13 years, and the first Black teacher we had was a professor, second year university, first time ever.
Okay, I'm gonna go into that, but what some of you just said before that, I like, because it's different for me to hear this. When you said that shucks, I had the question. The Caribbean culture and the attitude. Oh no, this is the question. They migrated to Canada. Was there a title for that migration? Because there was one when people went to Europe. There was something that it had a name. Did that have a name to it?
I don't recall. No, I just remember in the 60s under the former Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, not the son, the original Trudeau.
Right.
He opened the floodgates, and a lot of people went to Canada from all over.
Okay.
England, Caribbean, some from the U.S. We have family that were in the U.S. that came up to Canada, and so the doors opened, and a lot of cultures came in, which in and of itself, you could say on one aspect is giving you a rich mosaic of people, but on the other hand, you now have children and grandchildren who are exposed to a lot of different things. I said, your values may get diluted, and I've seen that. The under 30 crowd, most do not have any idea about their grandparents' story, their grandparents' journey. Most of them don't know.
Okay, let's go into this one then. Do you have a grandparent story that is unique in your family? Something that somebody did back in the Caribbean or something that you can share?
I have one unique story. I have an uncle who left Trinidad as a young man, went to Florida. And he told me a story. He said when he was in Florida, and I guess back then he was working, picking oranges, I guess Florida oranges, right? He said he must have worked for a month. And at the end, of course, you live there, right? They do room and board. He said at the end of 30 days, you know how much money he got, Anthony? $1.49. And he said when they brought him that $1.49, he just tossed it over his shoulder and he says, I'm getting out of here. He went to Canada, and at age 40, he went back to school and he got his degree. This is a 40-year-old man with a family. He got his degree and he started his career, and he did very, very well for 25 years. So imagine leaving what you would say would be like a poor situation, single mom raising 6 boys, leaving the island, going to Florida, realizing, oh my God, I'm never going to make it unless I have more education. And then at age 40, going back to school, I'm like, he's an inspiration to everyone in the family. He did so well. And you're not just a student when you're 18, right?
Yeah, sure.
He was a student at age 40, and he's still a student. This man is extremely,
Yeah,
extremely sharp fellow, and
I love
he
it.
just turned 90, but he's still studying.
Who told him to go to Florida? How did you hear about what happens in America? How did
He
they hear to go to Canada?
he followed his older brother who went to, and his older brother stayed in Florida, and he got his career. He's an engineer, and he raised his family in Florida. He had a different experience, right?
Yeah,
Education, as you know, Anthony, education is a really big component in how well you're going to do in this society, the
yeah,
education. And so, as I said, he realized he needed more
yeah.
education, and
Okay,
he ended up going to Canada.
I know I'm bouncing around. Let's go from that to going to Canada. Was there a
Yeah.
riot when all these black people showed up, like it was in London? The Notting Hill riot, I think it was
No,
called.
no, no, no. You got to remember, Canada was underpopulated. It's still pretty low population relative to the landmass. And so Canada needed people to come in. They needed people to come in. And don't forget, a lot of the economics, especially in Canada, is small businesses. So a lot of these immigrants come, some may get into the workforce and others start their own business. It's a whole different vibe in Canada. I find it's easier to get established in your own business. For many immigrants, it's hard to get a job in your field. I know people who have, listen to this, PhDs that are driving taxis because they don't have Canadian experience. I don't know if, the same barriers are in the US, but sometimes you come from a foreign country, you don't have Canadian experience, and you can't get into your field. It doesn't matter if you're a master's
Okay, I
degree,
got you.
PhD. A lot of people are underutilized
Okay,
because of that barrier of getting into their field that they were educated in their home country. So
okay.
long
That
story
leads to
short, long story short, there wasn't any riot. They welcomed people because they needed people to come in, start up businesses, work, help other industries grow. And so it was very welcoming.
but with that said, was there racism? Did y'all have to live in a
Oh
certain
yeah.
neighborhood growing up, the black
No,
neighborhood, that kind of thing?
no, not that restriction, but in Canada, they say overall there's a sense that Canadians are very polite, and for the most part they are, but there are subtle microaggressions, subtle things. So, for example, let's say your name is Anthony Brogdon, and you send out a resume, and your interview's at 3 o'clock, and you show up, and your name is what? Well, you don't look like that name. So you might get that. This is back in the 60s. So there
Okay,
was a lot of barriers to employment because there's an expectation of what you can do versus your potential. There's always been this disconnect, right? I think it's a global thing.
okay,
So there were times where you may have shown up for an interview, you got interviewed, but you weren't hired because there was this expectation you were less than, you couldn't do the job, or in some cases, they just don't like your
Did you grow
face.
up in a black neighborhood in Canada?
No, I grew up in a very
Or
multicultural
did you? Okay.
neighborhood. Yeah, I had friends from all over the world.
When did you like Black history? Is that when did you? Yeah.
My
When did?
dad,
Yeah.
my
Okay.
dad, my dad is like a walking encyclopedia. So, in many ways, he introduced me to the first books I was reading at age 4. Like my dad, we always had books at home. So that
Okay.
one of our values was education. And so I grew up knowing a lot of Black history. I could have probably named every flag of every Caribbean island when I was 5 because my dad encouraged us to learn about the culture and the history. Even knowing who the prime minister was in Trinidad, even though I didn't live there, he kept up to date. So I'm very thankful for that, which is probably why I ended up doing what I do today, Anthony.
Right.
How
Right.
do we keep our culture? How do we protect our history? How do we share the wisdom of the elders with the future generations? And I think because of my experience growing up in our home, I ended up getting into this field because how else are we going to capture our history? How do we capture that history? Think about it.
That's what writing does, doesn't it? That is what it preserves it on paper.
Yes. It's powerful. It is powerful. And if we have time, I want to share with everyone.
Yes.
There's probably 5 reasons to write your story. 5 main reasons to write your story. Okay.
Okay.
A lot of times people write their story because they've been through a journey and they want to help other people maybe avoid some of that pain. So you're writing to help other people. Sometimes you write a story to inspire people to overcome something or to achieve something. You know, when we think about Madam C.J. Walker or some of these brilliant people who broke a lot of molds, right? I mean, look at what Tyler Perry's doing in the U.S., for example.
Sure. Sure.
So you want to inspire. A third reason to share your story is because, let me tell you, it's liberating. When you share your story, you come to terms with your truth and you put that on paper, it gives you a sense of freedom. I wrote my autobiography in 2021 and it was so liberating. And a year later, my life story won an International Book Award in 2022, believe it or not. And so for me, it's all about how you tell the story and connect. But a fourth reason people tell their story, and I think this is where you and I have a similar passion, Anthony. You tell your story to capture your history. Capturing your history so that your grand, your great-grand, your great-great-grand can actually know, oh my God, I didn't know, the first newspaper in the US was owned by a Black family, or I didn't know this. So how else are we going to capture that? Writing is a great way. And of course, today we've got ebooks and audiobooks. So to me, one of the most powerful things we can do is to tell our story captured in some form to allow the future to understand where we came from, how we got to where we got to, what challenges we overcame, what were the hurdles, what were our dreams, what were our fears. It's so important. And I'm really passionate about this topic because most of the people who come to me they're coming to me because they don't know how to start to share their story. They don't know what to include, what to exclude. And so I'd say more than half the people I work with are people writing their story. They're writing their memoir, they're writing their autobiography. Okay. And so for me, like I said, it's so important to preserve that history.
I love it. Let me go back to and so what you're a book publisher?
I provide self-publishing services. So I work with writers and authors. Some people come to me before they're ready to publish, and some people already published and they need help with marketing. They need help with their branding. So we offer 11 services, including edit, design, format, distribution, marketing. I have a writer's retreat in Costa Rica. I also do virtual writing programs. So we're all supporting the writer in any stage, whether you publish or you want to publish.
And what's the name of your company?
Publishandpromote.ca, right there on that beautiful above my head.
Okay. Let me. You got into this how?
So I had the good fortune. One of my first jobs was working for a magazine company, and I don't want to date myself. I'm an old gal, but back in the 80s, I worked for a magazine company. I know, right?
It's too late.
Black and white TV,
Yeah, right. It's too late.
So back in the 80s, I worked for a magazine company. I also worked in the newspaper industry. I've been working with publishers and editors a long time, over 20 years. I started my company in 2010 because in 2009, I realized there wasn't enough on the market to educate people on how to properly put a book together, how to properly get your story done in a professional way. So the first year of business, we did 4-hour workshops called How to Publish and How to Promote Your Book. And that's what I did. How to publish, how to promote, hence the name Publish and Promote. So I got into this because I love to teach, Anthony. I've been teaching my whole life, but I wanted to teach people this is how you do it well, you do it professionally, and this is how your book looks just as good as Michelle Obama's book on a bookshelf.
Right.
And so we have been serving this community for over 13 years. And I'll tell you, you can't see, there's a shelf behind me. If I move my head really quick, I've got every book of every client we've ever published in my office.
Oh, I love it. So
I have
so
every book.
you do this, but you do it on an international scale, you said to me.
People find me online. I work with writers all over the world. So as you know, we're on Zoom here. Usually meet clients on Zoom. We have a chit chat, set up the project plan, and off we go. So we do all the services: editing, design, cover, distribution, marketing, and if they need phone support, and we also offer the writers retreat in Costa Rica.
Has there been somebody that has come to you that had a story you didn't want to publish?
There's a couple genres we don't do. I don't do erotica. We had a truck driver. He was married for 40 years and he wanted to do a book. I can't even say the title of the book because it's not PG. But the intention of the book was how to make your marriage last. But when he started writing it, it was beyond self-help. So I told him, no, we can't go down that path. So it was just a little too, too much for.
Yeah. Now,
Amazon would not have taken his book. That's all.
I got you. Is writing writing is an art form. So
writing is an art.
Do I have to write in perfect grammar for you? I mean, is that where you come in, or can I write it and my grammar be bad because that helps get my message across?
Write it as you can. We had 2 clients in the last 3 years. I've had clients that English is not their first language. You know how hard it is to write when you speak a different language. It's very hard to write in English. So we've had people who English is not their first language. They've written books. I've had people from India, Portugal, who've written books in English. We corrected grammatically. I also worked with a young woman who was developmentally challenged, so she couldn't even articulate a full sentence. So we interviewed her. We interviewed her for 2 hours, and we pulled out the pieces of her story, and then we elaborated on it, and then sent it back to her. So she wasn't able to write full sentences, but she had a beautiful story about self-acceptance. And so that's how we worked with her. We did an interview like you and I are talking right now. And we pulled out all those nuggets and all those hurdles and all those moments. We pulled it all out and we got her book done. So to answer your question, I work with virtually all writers. Most of the people who come to me are nonfiction. I'd say less than 20% are fiction, most are nonfiction. And I've had many poets this year. I think I've worked with 8 poets this year.
Okay. Is writing where you make me go deep in myself because you use a long paragraph to describe you walk down the street. You know what I mean? That's what I walk down the street, but you talk all about what you saw when you walked, how fast you walk. Is that's a form of it to make it a better book?
There's different ways to write a story. The 2 basic areas are narrative, where you're describing what happened, and then there's dialogue. So maybe if you and another person have a conflict, you're going to tell me, I said this, he said that. So you can do narrative or you can do descriptive, right? So that you give a flavor of what you're trying to convey. A lot of people don't know when to inject the dialogue. And depending on the topic you're talking about, if there's different points of view, it's always good to have that dialogue in the book between you and another person. Some people write a book and they've got some thoughts in their head that they don't want the reader to know what they're saying. So sometimes you share your thoughts by writing it in italics. There's so many different flavors of telling a story and even sharing your inner thoughts. There's different techniques you use when you're putting that down in a book. so that when I'm reading the page, I go, oh, this is an inner thought. She wrote it in italics versus this is what she's saying out loud to me, right? Or it could be you and another person having a discussion, you don't agree on something. Maybe you're trying to show a husband-wife relationship and conflict, or a mother-daughter conflict. You want to have that narrative going. You want the reader to hear what the parent said, the child said, the parent said. You want them to get into the character. And whether you're writing fiction or nonfiction, Anthony, you have characters in your story. And you know this. You know this from all the work you do. Everybody you write about is a character in a story, just like on a play, actor on a stage. So you want to give the reader a deep sense of who is this person? What do they value? What are they afraid of? What are they trying to avoid? What did they learn? How did they change? You know, you want to give them a rich, rich profile of who the character is. And in your memoir, it's you.
Yes,
so you have to tell people who you are. It can be a scary place. I've sat with many writers. They've done 70% of the work. They can't get to the finish line. And I'll sit with them. I'll go over their manuscript. I give them advice. We get it done. And then they feel amazing. They feel great when that book gets out. They got it done, you know? So I think for me, a lot of people think it's, for some people, they're anxious and they're afraid. And the first thing you have to acknowledge is, what are you afraid of? Are you afraid of saying something that might hurt somebody's feelings? Are you afraid maybe the person's still alive? I had a client, Anthony, she wrote the book under a pen name. And the way she wrote the book, she did not name anybody in the book. She talks about mother, father, brother, no name, because she didn't want to hurt their feelings, right? So some people write under a pen name because it's easier to share your story. So yeah, there's different ways you can do it.
Well, how about this one? When people are writing, and you say you don't necessarily do a lot of nonfiction, but from the nonfiction standpoint, if I'm writing about what happened in history in Africa, let's say, and or about the Moors, or about what life was like in the Caribbean and the history of slavery, I have to tell it. At least I have to do my best to be factual. So you have to look into the factual to help make sure that is, they're telling it correctly. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes. And that there's, you know, different terminology we use in publishing. So for example, a client wrote a book about leadership, but in that book, he quotes several other sources, right? It's more academic. So we have editors that will check the actual source, the reference, to make sure what she is quoting or stating is actually from that source. It's called source checking or reference checking. You want to give people a very accurate description. So even if you're writing historical fiction, it's historical. There has to be key elements as you're describing the location, the people, the cultural norms, the values of that decade, that era. You have to be very, very true to that, right? That's why people write historical fiction. There's that element of fact layered with the story, which is the fiction. So it's very important. And one thing I want to tell people listening, the most important investment you will ever make in your story is to have that story professionally edited, which includes checking those facts, making sure that you've got the right content in the right order. That's called development editing. So look at the whole flow of your story. Did you start in grade 1? Now you're talking about you got engaged, and then you said you had a baby, but what happened to the wedding? Like, I'm confused. So development editors are looking at the structure and flow of your story, making sure, like a river, can I follow it? Can the reader follow it? Line editing is all the dot the I's, cross the T's, but the structure of your story, that better have some good bones, right? You need to have good bones to that story. And then you can add all the flavors and the conflict and the discoveries and all that. So there's so many ways to tell a story, Anthony. We don't have time for all of it, but I just want to give you a flavor of why you need to make sure your story is polished. And I've turned down people as well. I've had to turn away manuscripts because it wasn't it wasn't serving the reader. If you're not serving the reader, your book's not going to sell. Right?
Would you rather the person write it themselves and then you edit, or the other way around, where they just give you the idea and they kind of tell you what it is and you write it?
No, no, we don't do ghostwriting at this time.
Yes.
We start once your story is written. Now, if people know they want to write and they don't know how to get started, they don't know what to tell, then they work with me. I have a 2-hour session and I'll help them create their book outline in 2 hours. Right? I have a technique I use so that if you're not sure, I don't know, did we have 6 chapters, 10 chapters? What should I tell, how, when, what, come to me and we'll get it done. So
Okay.
the number one thing for most people is having the book outline, understanding what they're going to say and why, who they're writing for. Because once you have your outline, writing becomes easy. And I'm telling you, writing is much easier after you create your book outline. And that's why I say to folks who aren't sure, I said, let's meet. We're going to meet on Zoom. I have a template and I work with you and your book outline is done in 2 hours. I've been doing this for 15 years and I'll tell you, most people get stuck writing because they didn't take the time to create an outline. It's a map of where you're going. And like you would say, if you don't know where you're going, how are you going to get there? It's like
Yeah,
having
right,
a
right,
compass.
right,
Outline is
right,
a compass. I'm in the forest. I don't know where I'm going. Here's my compass.
right.
I'm
I
going to
love
talk
it.
about this story and then this story and then this story. And here's the moral of my book. Thank you.
Right, right. I
Right.
love it. Almost to a close, but let me ask you this: when you when you do this, your greater good is what? You've alluded to it earlier, but your greater good is what?
I love to teach, but what I experience when people get their project done is seeing how they transform. And I would say most of the people who come to me, their story is helping serve so many people. I had a young man in his 30s, just going to give you a quick example. His book is called Going Dry, where he came to a breaking point and he said, you know what? I'm not the man I'm supposed to be. I'm not the father I'm supposed to be. This is how his book starts. He knew he had to stop drinking. And now he is talking to thousands of young people. He's on podcasts all over North America. Imagine how many people he's touching. So for me, my little role is to help you touch thousands of people. And that, for me, is the reward. That's the reward because he's going to help a whole group of kids think twice before they start drinking, especially college and university kids. So just that one man writing that one book can reach tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people
Yeah,
and
I love
change
it.
their lives. And I think to me, that's really why I do what I do, because we're changing
Yeah.
lives. We're
You know that
changing lives.
that was one of the things that separated Ida B. Wells, Frederick Douglass, because they wrote it down. They chronicled what was happening at the time, and then that was able to assimilate in the world, and
Yeah,
other people were able to hear the story and act in some form or fashion. Like, hey, we
yeah,
got to help fight them in the civil rights, or Frederick Douglass. Now we understand what's going on to the black people in America.
yeah,
That's the other part of it.
yeah. You empower people, you educate, you inspire, you empower. And from a historical viewpoint, and I know you're a passionate person about history, if we don't capture this elder wisdom now, when are we going to get it? I want to give you a quick statistic, and I'm
Yeah, you
shocked at
got
this.
time. Yeah,
In the
come on.
United States, listen to the math, there are 55 million people over 65. There are only 20,000 people over 80. What does that tell you? Between 65 and 80, we lose a lot of elders. If we don't invest and take time to talk to and gather up these stories, what's going to happen in the next 15 years? How
That's
many elders are we going to lose? And how much history is going to vanish in the ground, 6 feet under, right? So if 55 million people are over 65, how come there's only 20,000 people over the age of 80 in the United States? What does that tell you?
Sure,
right?
sure.
If you're over 65, man, get a voice recorder, start writing in your journal, get your grandkids to come over and write for you. Do something, because
Yeah, I love
you
it.
don't know the day, the hour you're not going to be here, and how
Sure.
much history is going to leave this planet.
Yeah, sure. Just a couple more. The one
Mm.
thing about writing is that it does preserve the story, so on and so forth. But to me, like, give you an example of this. There was a lady who wrote a book, and I didn't read it, and I don't know how well it was. But the one thing that made her book stand out is that men should slap their wives. This was
That
a
was in
bunch
her
of,
book?
yeah, that was in her book. And so something in her book caught fire, which helped with the sales of the book. Is that some determining factor of your writing to say, okay, I got to give you some tidbit that might resonate with the masses so that you sell a lot of books?
Well, what I'm going to say on that question is, it's probably a seventh reason why people write a book. Some people write a book for shock and awe. So there's some book titles you're like, oh my goodness, I need to read that. So for example, if someone wrote a book called Secret Cancer Cures They Don't Want You to Know, you're going to want to buy the book, right?
Yeah, sure.
Secret, they don't want you to know the secret. First thing you're going to do, well, I want to know the secret, I'm going to buy that book. So some people invest a lot of time in book titles. They spend a lot of time around the imagery on the book, the title of the book, but let's hope the content matches what you think you're going to get. So some people do write for shock and awe. There's a psychology around book titles, right? There's a lot of work that goes into it. Like sometimes when we're working with a client, we might have 12 different images and we're voting on it. Like I'll have a group of people voting on the book cover before we pick that book cover. We've done that many times because there's so many subtle things. You can change an image, change the color, change the font. It's going to change how you feel when you look at that book cover. But I'll tell you, you only have 3 seconds to get people's attention on Amazon. So you better invest in a really good book cover. Yeah, one of the things that I think helped me win my award was my book cover. You can't forget that book cover. It's pretty noticeable. One title, one word title, and then the story. So basically, to answer your question, that person obviously wanted a lot of sensational attention, and some people like the book The Secret.
Yeah.
If you heard a book called The Secret, aren't you going to want to know what's it about?
Yeah, right. Do you have a copy of your book there that you can show us?
Yeah, I could find it. Hold on.
Please.
Yeah, I'll just show you
online,
quickly.
or we popping on this show. This is show the pub. Yeah, we promote. That's what we do.
This is yeah, I'll show you. This is my oh, can
Get out. There it is.
That's okay. Yeah. So on the right is the book cover unveiled. It's my autobiography. And that image you're looking at, we actually took 4 images, self-imposed, layered one on top of the other to create that book cover. That's 4 images in one. It does represent the 4 elements. There's a lot of meaning behind the cover. And of course, when you remove the veil, you see things a lot clearer. So that's why the eye is on the cover. In many ways, my life story is about everybody's story. It's about accepting who we are. It's about understanding our journey. It's about paying attention to all the trials and tribulations, because I do believe, Anthony, in our struggles, in our challenges, we often grow, we get a little wiser. And so this book won the 2022 International Award, Nonfiction Award for Spirituality. And so my story has a very strong spiritual theme. Yeah, so I was very honored to receive it, and it was a labor of love. It took a village to get this book done. I had 2 editors, a writing coach. The gentleman who wrote the foreword also contributed to the story. So yeah, it was a village. It was a village. Great cover designer, by the way. He's based in Toronto. Yeah, so that's my little story. I've written 14 books to date, and I'm not done. I've got a couple more coming out next year. I love to write and I love to teach. But thank you for sharing.
Yes. Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
love that.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's beautiful. And we're gonna have all this in the description, everybody. Let me ask you this. And so people can find you how?
Go to publishandpromote.ca. There you will not only find our self-publishing services, you can book a free call with me. We have a writing coaching program. I work with writers over 45 days to get their book written. And we have a 7-day writers retreat in Costa Rica.
Oh, really? I love it. So
Yeah, lots of
you
fun.
proud of yourself, aren't you? You aren't for where you started to where you are now. This is good stuff.
I would say I have a sense of being very content and fulfilled because I'm doing what I love to do.
There you go.
I think if you do what you love to do, life is good. I think I have the best job in the world
Yeah,
because
there
at
you
the
go.
end of the day, it's no different than public speaking. You know, you could be very fearful to get up on stage, but when you finally make the step on stage and you start speaking, it only gets easier. I know many people who almost backed away, but they got it done. And now that they wrote their first book, they're writing 2, 3, 4 books. You just got to get the first one done, right? So for me, I would say I'm doing what I love and I love what I do. And that keeps me going. Like that keeps me
I
going.
love you.
I mean, I light up. I light up. Every time we hit that publish button on Amazon, I actually capture videos now, I think the last 2 minutes before we hit the publish button. So you could see the writer, and oh my God,
Mm,
it's amazing.
it's
Yeah,
beautiful.
it's
Yeah, well,
amazing.
hey, thank you so very much.
My pleasure.
Everybody, I tell you, this is what I do at Strong Inspirations. And seeing this all started from her being on that social media. That social media is effective, everybody. You people might say,
It
I
can
don't like
be
Facebook, but don't put your business on there. That's
Yeah,
all you're
it
going
can be
to do.
effective. It can be effective. I'm an old school girl. So I think I reached out by email. It was
Yeah,
all good though. But
yeah.
it's good to connect. It's so important. And the other thing I want to leave listeners with, if you think about, let's not think about our differences for a minute. Our story connects us to other human beings. Our stories connect us. I'm not going to say it unites us. You know, this world is still a little crazy, but our stories connect us to other human beings, right? And so the more we, oh my gosh, we had a similar experience in this person, this person. So we begin to relate to each other a little better. Like you said, look what your books are doing to help open up the minds of people that, oh my gosh, there were black millionaires in the 1800s. What?
Right.
You're opening up minds. We're opening up minds. We're opening, widening the lens. Pay attention. You know, so our stories are very powerful and it really does connect us as human beings. And
Yes.
that's a really good space to be in. So I encourage people, go talk to your elders over 65.
Yes. There you go. I
Get
love
their story. Get their story.
Hey, thank you so much. Hey, everybody, Strong Inspirations, where we give it to you straight, no chaser.
Thank you.
We intoxicate you, not alcoholic, with this good history, this good thoughts, this wellness, and hopefully you walk away saying, "Whoa, I'm a better person by watching that, and I'm going to act on it. Don't procrastinate, and things will happen. You can become, as she has, international author of the year and all that good stuff. So hit the subscribe button, hit the like button on it, hit the notifications bell, tell somebody about Strong Inspirations. Everybody, wherever you are, go to her website. The sister is serious and she good. She follows up. She call you back. She don't play with you. She get it done in a timely manner. I am sure, because you can't be 13 years without people feeling that way about you
Mhm.
and effectively doing it. So she's one of those. She on that Better Business Bureau where she's got a 4-star rating and all that good stuff. Thank you so very much for coming on the show. Thank you.
Thanks for
I'll stay
having
in
me.
touch. And I'm
Thank
coming to
you.
Costa Rica, so you
Come
know,
on down.
yeah,
Get
come
some
on down.
sunshine.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Have a great day.
You too.